I had my own health experiences that led me to discover I had all these nutrient deficiencies. And so I was like, oh, shoot, I thought I ate really well. I thought I'm a healthy person. But the truth is, an apple today does not have the same nutrients that it had 50 years ago. So we do need to fill the gaps in our diet. And our food system is just not what it is. But right now, the options in these form factors are like swallowing, handfuls of pills and capsules with a lot of synthetic isolated ingredients or sugary gummy bears. And I didn't like either of those options.
Let's link up with Krista on The Fix. She's a wellness coach with a focus on mental well-being and physical strength.
Hey, Fix listeners, welcome back to our latest episode of the Fix podcast. I know it's been a minute that you've heard me introduce anybody other than myself, but I do have a special guest for today's show, and I'm really excited to share this interview with Sara Cullen, who is the founder of GEM. I am so excited about this product. I can't wait to hear all of you guys dive into this one and just give me feedback on what you think about this. And I have a feeling a lot of you are going to want to try this, but we are diving into the world of supplements and vitamins, which is so commonly referred to as the wild, wild west, because there are so many different things out on the market. It's kind of exhausting. You have no idea half the time where some of these products are being sourced, where they're coming from. You're buying it off of places like Amazon that maybe you shouldn't be. And you're just not actually sure what kind of quality you're getting because there are other synthetics wrapped up in our supplements. So Sara saw this problem and decided to tackle it head on. You're going to hear all about what is called the bite. And there are actually 3 different versions of it. So we get into that throughout the course of this episode for different purposes, multivitamin, calming for sleep, all that kind of good stuff to hit your health from all different aspects. But what I really love the most about this conversation, outside of actually understanding why Sara saw a need for this in the market and the way that she's really disrupting this space, is the fact that we go deep and we talk about motherhood and how in the last 9 months since becoming a brand new mom, that shifted the way she thinks about her work and her business and life in general. So there's truly something in this podcast episode for everybody. If you're a person who's like, I've never really thought a whole lot about taking my vitamins, or you feel like it's something you want to do, but you're just not even sure where to start, products like GEM are just simply making that so much easier and taking all of the guesswork out of it. But on top of that, you'll also hear Sara talk about the fact that there's intention behind this product, that it's about taking a pause and it's literally delivered in a bite, like a single bite, so that you can have that reminder to take a moment for yourself for the day. And I wanted to highlight that here in this introduction because it's so easy to talk about what goes into product creation, what the benefits are of taking something in its physical form, and like how those ingredients are going to support your health. But I just really thought that feature was super important and very much aligned with so many of the things that we preach inside of the Fitness Fix. For those of you listeners who out there are always in that go, go, go mode, there is a lot of intention behind this product being something that asks you to slow down for just a second and reminds you that you do have that moment to be able to take it. So hearing Sara's perspective on that too was very meaningful and impactful. So with that, let's welcome Sara to the Fix podcast. Sara, welcome to the Fix podcast. So excited to have you on today. Like I mentioned before we hit record, one of my first guests in a little bit, so no pressure, but I think this is going to be a great conversation and I'm excited for the Fix listeners to meet you. So when we have a guest on the show, I always kick it off with 2 signature questions. The first one being a light and fun one just to get to know you. I am a big coffee drinker. I actually have my dog sitting next to me. Her name is Bean, and that is because I love coffee so much. And I like to ask my guests, what are you sipping on to start your day? Do you like coffee? Do you have a go-to order? And if you don't, you could tell me tea, matcha, whatever. I know we got lots of varieties these days.
I love it. Well, first off, thank you for having me, Krista. And my go-to order recently has been an Americano,
Nice.
and it's from my local coffee shop called Companion.
Love it. Oh, that's such a cute name for a coffee shop.
It is really cute. And I love everyone there. I love going there in the morning. And I just, Americano, it's like I like watered down. So it's nice.
It's still, you get the, I say most of the people that come on the show, obviously being in the health and wellness space, nobody ever has like a really crazy drink per se. And it's because we're efficient. We need our caffeine and we're just going to get right into it. That's my philosophy on it.
I agree. I used to love cold brew and like stronger coffee,
Mhm.
but I gave birth 9 months ago now, and ever since I really have been pregnant, I haven't been able to have like a
That's,
coffee.
yeah, that's a fair reason.
Just like getting older, I guess. I can't stomach it anymore.
That's okay. And your hormones change. So, things, everything starts to change. And I think one of the most important things, and ironically, when I first started asking people this question, like I said, it was like purely from the sake of like, I love coffee. This is a good icebreaker. And the more that I have had guests on the show and we kind of get into this, I think one of the big takeaways that I've had from asking people this so much is that coffee is such a good example of something that is well researched, and being in the health and wellness space, we obviously care about this aspect, but it's also so individual and a really good opportunity to figure out how your body responds to something. Like take it
Mm,
out, add it back in, play around with things, see what actually works for you. And that is really kind of the blueprint to everything with fitness and nutrition. But where we get stuck with that is some people don't have the patience to do those things, or we're on the go, we're on the move, we're trying to get so many things accomplished that we just don't actually step back to have some of that self-awareness. So I appreciate that you've been able to recognize that for yourself too.
for sure. I appreciate this metaphor.
Yeah, there you go. So we're going to take it in a different direction and go right into the good stuff. And as I had said to you previously, I like for this question to be really candid and off the cuff because I want it to be the first thing that pops into your mind. And that is, I could sit here, I could ask you about your resume, how you started GEM. And yes, we will get into all of that. But the Fix listeners want to know Sara on a deeper level. And we just start there right out of the gate. So I want to know beyond the resume, like who are you at your core? And for that reason, why should we continue to listen to the rest of this podcast today?
Wow, who am I at my core? Well, right now I am a mother. That's a very new development in my life, and that's been really exciting. Gem is really my company and my first baby.
Yeah.
And I like to say I have two babies, one that sleeps at night and one that does not. So I
I
think that
love that.
I've been building and nurturing and obsessing over like our health and our nutrition and our environment for so long, building Gem, and now it's really exciting to do that with a little human. And so I have been long passionate though about our food system. And it's something that I grew up on a farm in Oregon. And so I don't have a particular, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an RD, but I'm someone who has made my own mistakes, have trialed and error a ton, and have my own journey. And so I'm kind of just sharing from this authentic place of here's kind of things that have worked for me. Here's things that I've tried. I think to go back to your coffee metaphor, just through patience and continue to test and do new things. And so I guess if you're listening to this episode, you would want to listen to it from that lens and the things that I'm working on right now as a mother and a founder.
I love that. So, first of all, congrats on motherhood.
Thank you.
And second, I think it makes the most sense to, you brought it up, growing up on a farm in Oregon, what that was experience is like and how that shaped you. Why don't we just kind of start from the beginning? And if you could walk us through the connection point of how that eventually led you to GEM.
Great. I love that. Yeah, so I grew up on a farm. It wasn't a for-profit farm, so it was more just a bunch of animals and plants and things like that, and lots of space to run around and explore. And being in Oregon in the forest, and so I was very much around nature. That was very much deeply ingrained in me, and being with the environment. And my dad was actually an entrepreneur, still is, building in machinery, inventing machinery actually within the agriculture space. So
Wow.
I was around a lot of big farmers. His clientele were huge dairy farmers specifically. So I actually grew up around that as well. So kind of have always had this entrepreneurship edge, I guess, within me, building things. I went to college and studied as a very long major. So I like to shorten it and just say international agricultural development. And so I really studied farming systems, food systems through the lens of environmental studies. And there's, kind of other focuses to that major that I'll spare everyone. At one moment, I thought I was going to go into the CIA, so
Wow.
really happy I didn't. I would be quite horrible. You can read everything on my face. So, a lot of twists and turns, but ultimately, after I graduated, I ended up joining Venture for America, which is kind of like Teach for America. People are familiar with that program, but instead of schools, you're placed actually in startups. And that's really where I got that startup bug of building things with awesome people. Started my first company after that program, and it was called Plant Water. It was actually a CBD beverage. I was first to market in CBD, cannabis. And I loved that at the time, there is this whole weed world that everybody only thought of as getting high. And I love the idea of transcending that and showing kind of this untapped potential for your health through this plant system. And so started a company, failed very quickly. So not much to talk about there, other than a lot of lessons that I learned.
Tons
And
of lessons. There is plenty to talk about there. We'll go back to that
okay,
one.
great.
Yeah.
And then I ended up having my own health journey that brought me to starting GEM, and I can dive more into that too.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I do want to go back to what you mentioned about first round of entrepreneurship and even like what led you to Venture for America and all of that too. But for the sake of the listener getting the full picture, I think it does make the most sense for us to talk about GEM and what it is and what you're really disrupting in the space. Because I think when a lot of people think about supplements, vitamins, and that sort of thing, I think there's a lot of fear around it these days and confusion over like what is good for my body, what is best for me, what should I be wary of, what should I actually be looking for. And I would argue that a lot of what you're trying to create is like, hello, this needs to be whole food. Like this is something that it's called a supplement for a reason. And that's how, at least how I explain it to my clients. But when I first learned about GEM, I was like, okay, this makes a lot more sense because we should be looking at this in a way that is bigger than just supplementing what you're already getting from your diet.
For sure. I think, our very, very first ad was like just a bite in our hands and like your vitamin should look like this. And I had my own health experiences that led me to discover I had all these nutrient deficiencies. And so I was like, oh, shoot, I thought I ate really well. I thought I'm a healthy person. But the truth is, an apple today does not have the same nutrients that it had 50 years ago. So we do need to fill the gaps in our diet. And our food system is just not what it is. But right now, the options in these form factors are like swallowing, handfuls of pills and capsules with a lot of synthetic isolated ingredients or sugary gummy bears. And I didn't like either of those options. And most of those options actually have a lot of things that I'm food sensitive to, just artificial fillers and things of that sort. But most importantly, I love this like food is medicine aspect. And so I started going down my own journey of like concocting these really weird and wonderful smoothies that were like super green and tasted horrible, but made me feel great. Became obsessed with superfoods like spirulina and turmeric and how can we, and so it just kind of snowballed from there and ended up being this bite. And we've done literally 100 iterations of this bite to get to an incredible
Wow.
taste and incredible quality. So it's been, many years now that we've been working on it, and I'm so proud of where we've come and or where we are. And yeah, and so this bite, from a food is medicine form factor, it actually absorbs better in your body, right? Because our vitamin substrates actually come from whole foods. So you're getting the cofactors, the co-nutrients that give you so much more than just the isolated synthetic. And there's a lot of cool studies around this too. Actually, there's not a lot, that's the problem. But there is one in a book called Whole by Dr. T. Cullen Campbell, whom I love. And it's about like looking at, and it does this incredible study where it has like a vitamin C capsule compared to an apple. And the vitamin C capsule has so much more of its measured vitamin C, but the apple has like a minuscule part, like a minuscule of it. But basically, the apple had 263 times that bioavailable impact on your body in a healthy way
Wow.
than the vitamin C capsule did. So it had nothing to do with that isolated synthetic volume of that vitamin C. It had to do with all the other things that apple had to offer in its antioxidant rich profile. And so that's this idea, right, of food is medicine. That's the data behind food is medicine. And that's really what we're trying to deliver within our product, is in our hero. So I'll pause there.
No, that was great. Please, you can keep going. I'm like, I think I think, just for somebody who, like I said, might be confused and overwhelmed by all the different things and like knowing, like, I think when you think about the average person and you think about in my context of working with my nutrition clients and the questions that they ask me around what should I be thinking about beyond my food, we really focus on inside of the fitness fix, the whole person. Yes, I have most of my clients track macros, but we're also looking at your sleep, your digestion, your hunger cues, your energy levels. Because at the end of the day, I literally just did a podcast where I explained that like the fitness fix, you don't come to us for weight loss. Like that is a byproduct of everything else that we're looking at. Because realistically, what we're talking about is pretty transformational, like changing your relationship with food, changing your identity, asking you to step into a very different version of yourself. Normally, a lot of the women we work with come in and they're in this state of like doing everything for everybody else, that taking a vitamin is like the last thing on their list, because as it is, they're telling me, I'm really inconsistent between meetings and actually making sure I'm eating breakfast. And then sometimes it's 2 o'clock and I look up and I haven't eaten lunch yet. It's like, there's the whole person and what you believe of yourself and your mindset that we really need to get into too, because it's deeper than what should be on my plate and what should be going into my body. Right. So you then add this layer of there's so much information on the internet. A lot of this information is contradictory. Just to even bring up your whole thing about food is medicine, I'm laughing because I saw a ridiculous post on Instagram not even like 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I wish I remember who the creator was. And I'm not saying this to throw them under the bus, but it was basically saying like food isn't medicine because I prefer my SSRI and coffee. And it's like, what kind of message is that sending to people? They got shredded in the comments, I think rightfully so. But like, you're trying to be funny about something that is just inherently untrue. And for me, I should pause there and say, what's your reaction to that from the lens of your own personal experience with navigating your own health issues, figuring out your deficiencies and being willing to experiment, but to now entering this space where you're actually really trying to change the conversation and change the narrative?
Yeah, I always say that everyone asks me, like, what are your wellness tips? And it's like, it's usually things that are free. I guess food isn't free, but I mean, it's things that are not hard or complicated. It's not like you have to biohack this way and
Right.
meditate for 2 hours and do a cold plunge in sauna. Like it's not a 20-step routine in the morning. It's simply like eating a balanced diet, drinking water, getting sleep, just moving your body. You don't even need to do a crazy exercise, simply walking around, right? And like taking a moment to breathe. It's not even like meditating. You can just literally take 10 seconds and just focus on your breath, and that's great. So I think there's just like little things like that doesn't have to be complicated. And that's why I also created Gem, because unfortunately you do need to fill the gaps in your diet. No one can eat perfectly anymore, especially in America. Our soils are just so degraded. Our food is what it is. And so we do need some help, some supplementation. But it is overwhelming, right? To have a handful of pills and like all these things. And so our daily bite, our hero bite, is kind of this delightful way. It's not a candy, it's not a gummy bear. It's just one bite that you eat. And it's also, this moment of pause to just appreciate your food and appreciate this, food and this abundance. And just like it's 20 different plants in this bite. So you're getting quite an abundance in one chewable bite. And I think that idea of just having a delightful way to fill the gaps in your diet as well is really important. And so that was kind of the premise behind, Gem. And it's really everything against this ad that you said you saw.
And I love what you just said about the pause piece of it too, because that gets at what I think is even in my own life, and I'm sure you can relate to this, handling your business and now stepping into motherhood too. I'm sure that's testing you in ways that I'd love to ask you more questions about as well. But it's like, we know all of these things, right? Like we know the importance of movement. We know the importance of getting good sleep. And sometimes we're not always the best at least I can speak for myself and say I'm not always the best at practicing what I preach. And I have realized that like, for as much as we talk about some of these day-to-day things that we know we should be doing, some aspect that I would argue is like the hardest part to hold clients accountable to. But when they do it, it reaps the biggest benefits. It's that pause. It's actually connecting with yourself. It's actually having that moment with really checking in with your nervous system and just like being aware of like how your body is responding to things instead of pushing feelings down or ignoring what's coming up for you or kind of retreating a little bit and being like, oh, I'm not doing what I should be doing. I'm going to disappoint my coach. Like that's a comment I hear quite often. And I know it's coming from women who are high achieving and put a lot on their plate. So I really appreciate the fact that like that is an element of just saying, hey, we're not even asking you to do a whole lot. Like take the pause, take the bite. Like that takes literally seconds of your time and you can afford yourself that. You need to give yourself that.
And the moment that you think you don't have time to do that is when you need it the most.
100%. So true. So true. I couldn't agree with that more. I want to ask you before we kind of go down the motherhood conversation and maybe a few other things about business. I do want to go back to more of the formula and the science behind the bite itself. You mentioned that it was over 100 iterations before you got to what you have today for Gem. So walk me through that process. Where did you start and what has that been like for you? Especially just like knowing your background, that a lot of this is coming from personal experience of like recognizing, hey, there were some gaps in my own life and I needed to figure out a better way to fill these.
Exactly. And so I had this personal experience. I had this bite that worked for me, but my first question was like, does this work for other people? So in typical me fashion, I did more of like a focus group. I set up a Facebook.
Okay.
I got a couple hundred women together and I tried to get, people to refer like their tertiary circles. So it wasn't like just my friends or something,
Mm.
people I didn't know. And I just started seeing the bite with them. So I started shipping them the product and then I would do a survey, of course, and just get their feedback. And I would iterate from there. And I was working with the food scientists and herbalists at the time. And then I started assembling my scientific team. And so we've built out the scientific advisory board quite extensively now. We have a neurologist, a functional medicine doctor. We have two plant biologists. We have a molecular
Wow.
nutritionist. We have a registered dietitian, three registered dietitians, and herbalist. Yeah. So like a lot of incredible minds. And the idea is like I didn't want to approach it from just one Western medical lens. I really wanted to have East and West. I wanted to have this holistic perspective. Sometimes I call it kaleidoscopic perspective in looking at the bite and looking at your health. So you're not just solving parts of you, you're solving all of you and really looking holistically. And every single one of our bites, speaks to that. Philosophy, and I can share more with you about our ingredients in each of the bite, but that would also take an hour of this call. So,
You
so
can give us
that
the highlights.
yeah. So
Which ones
that's
you think are the most
how,
important?
yeah. So that's how I, first started was through this Facebook group and then forming this larger scientific advisory team. And we've always had sort of the customer at the heart and center of it. So I've continued to evolve the product even after we launched. Continue to go back to the drawing board, make it better, find new, better ingredients. And we have, an entire list of what we look for in a supplier, organic, non-GMO, right? No fillers, no additives, no artificial anything. Having it come from whole foods, so it's the most bioavailable and potent form. And I always joke that took a long time to get to a good tasting bite because we fit a lot of things into this bite without having any added sugar. It's really hard to do. My life would have been a
Sure,
lot
that's
easier had I
extremely
started
hard.
a gummy bear company.
Yeah, of course.
So I like to also remind everyone that, yes, we've like really perfected it from a scientific lens, but also from a taste lens. And actually my R&D person who's now in-house is a trained pastry chef. So she really makes sure that it is delicious.
That's so cool. But I know this is like more specific to her journey, but I'd be curious for her like what led her from the path to go from being a trained pastry chef to wind up in the gem community.
Well, we'll have to interview her next.
Yeah, that's really
Right.
cool.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. When you think back on some of the iterations of it, were there any that come to mind that you're like, this just does not taste good? Because I know it sounds like you have a tolerance for it because you were like, I made all these green smoothies and I knew that this was what was going to be good for me.
So before I even arrived at the bite form factor,
Uh-huh.
I tried a few other form factors, and one of them was a dehydrated jerky of sorts. You can think of it as a jerky. It
Interesting.
was more of a like a fruit roll up probably is more of the common
Okay.
term, but it had this, it was a through dehydration and it was not good.
I'm
As
thinking
it
about that out
sounds
loud.
as
I'm
I
like, it
explain it.
doesn't sound, yeah, it doesn't sound like, is again a little more in the weeds, but I am very curious about this. When you were kind of thinking about like the different forms, what went into your thought process around that? Like, what made you even think to try that, the dehydrated jerky kind of form versus the actual bite that you now have today? Does it have to do with like efficacy? What were some of the factors that you were considering there?
Yeah, there's certainly an efficacy of our cold press bite. I love not heating it up, so that was really important to me. And what else? Well, I think that there's, I was playing a lot with like powders and smoothies and sorts, right? So the messy world of powders, I just didn't want to go down that route. That actually wasn't convenient to me. And obviously, I didn't like swallowing handfuls of pills and I didn't want a candy gummy bear. I couldn't have those things. So it also was this delightful kind of one bite convenience nature
Mm.
that I really wanted. I'm not sure if I had that in the jerky.
Yeah, that's very
So
true.
that was more of like the cold press
Definitely would be
aspect,
more than
but
one bite.
yeah, yeah. But that was like, how I kind of arrived at the bite was I really wanted this.
Okay.
I didn't want like this messy world of powders, which I know some people find very convenient and that's awesome. But like for me, it wasn't convenient.
No, I'm so with you. And I feel this way. I hear this all the time. Like so many people come to me and the big question I get is like, what's like a really quick breakfast can I make? Like, should it be a smoothie? And when you really think about it, it's like it's not exactly that quick. We're pulling out our blender. How many other ingredients are we putting in there? And yes, like I'm this is a little bit of a different comparison because we're also talking about it as like a meal, not just a multivitamin piece of it. But let's even take like creatine or something. I know that it's a great supplement to take, but just the fact that I need to scoop the little teeny thing into my water, I'm not as consistent with it as I could be, which it sounds so ridiculous, but it's just like, it's just another thing to think about. Whereas if I were to go and grab it, I know some people prefer the creatine gummies for that reason, but I've heard and read different things that like sometimes that's not even as effective. So being able to have something that is super quick and you can just like pop it and go, perfect.
Exactly. Yeah. It's interesting that you touch on the creatine gummies because I'm currently like researching that world and figuring out but a lot of it's a heating process that's a compromising process of those creatine gummies.
Okay. So when it comes to jam and talking about like the cold press aspect of it, can you share with us a little bit more about why that's such an important aspect of the process of making the bite?
Yeah, I mean, you're just not, I mean, kind of common sense, right? Like when you heat things up, when you boil things, right? You're killing germs, you're killing good things and bad things. Um, it's not always the case, I guess. Like there are aspects that you warm up, like steamed vegetables. Sometimes you actually get better nutrients when you steam
Fair.
them
Fair.
raw.
Yeah.
So it's not like always the case, but generally speaking, sometimes when you heat things up, you kill off more of the nutrients than you would like to. So that cold press aspect is really important. We have a proprietary way that we blend things, right, and press them in, and most of all, it's about what we use and not what we use, right? We're not using anything additive. It's naturally bound by dates, for instance, which are really good for you, and a nice prebiotic fiber. So everything we use is super intentional and designed to be nutritious for you.
Speaking of fiber, I'd love for you to weigh in on this because, as we talked about before we hit record on the show, I think we go through waves with social media of like hot topics and hot things. And I feel like fiber is, I don't want to, I shouldn't even say having a moment because like it should be in everyone's diet and it shouldn't have a moment. But you know how there's cycles with different things. Like everything was protein, protein, protein all the time. And now recently I feel like that's shifting towards fiber. So I'm curious what in your position and in your experience, like where you stand on that. Cause I think people aren't paying enough attention to it.
Well, it's so interesting, and I wish my R&D person was on this call with me because she'd be much more eloquent speaking about it. But fiber is having a moment because people are looking for natural GLP-1 support, right?
Mm-hmm.
And actually, we do use beta glucan, from oats and beta glucan from algae. And so beta glucan is essentially a type of fiber but it's a very specific type. I'm sure if my R&D person is on this call, she'd be like, that's not exactly how you say it. So bear with me.
No, I think that's I know what you're
But
trying to
it's
say.
a
And for the
specific,
average person, this is a good way to
yeah,
explain
I'm
it.
just
Yeah.
trying to like simplify it here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like a specific type of fiber, really, derived from these sources. And when it's derived from oats in particular, it can actually work the same way as like a GLP-1 drug in that it's talking to your receptors. And so it's talking to your receptors to essentially feel satiated, right? And eat less. And that's what a lot of these drugs do. I'm by no means disclaimer saying that this is a replacement for people who like truly need these drugs. I'm just saying that it works on your receptors in a way that makes you feel satiated and eat less, which is what a lot of people want who take these drugs from a weight loss lens. And so there's a lot of incredible science behind this, actually. There's a lot of incredible clinical research. So I think it's fantastic that people are looking at, again, natural food-based ways, like beta glucan derived from oats, to work in the way that they would like them to work on their body for their fitness and weight goals. So I think that that's fantastic looking at it from a food angle. And I get really excited about that. I do think people need more fiber in their diet in
Yeah,
general.
they
But by
really
the
do.
way, it's not just beta glucan from oats. You also just generally eating more fiber does make you
Mhm.
more satiated and you eat less in return. So having a very fiber and water rich diet. I think we're all also chronically dehydrated. So I have to like say this every time I talk about anything. I'm like, if everyone just had more water in their life, and a lot of fiber comes from these vegetables that have a lot of water. So it's wonderful to eat them together from a food source. So you're getting the water, within that as well, which, yeah, which all goes together. So
Yeah, it is so important. Right before we jumped on this call, I had a meeting with my nutritionist that I work with and holds me accountable, and we were having the fiber conversation because I had been following more of a meal plan for a little bit, and then I was like, you know what, I'm going to go back to tracking my food. And part of the reason why I did it was like I kind of wanted to spot check the amount of fiber I was getting. And even as someone who will make the blanket statement of I eat a lot of vegetables and I eat a lot of fruit, I was like barely hitting 17 grams before like 2 p.m. and then having to really make up for it with my dinner and like throwing in as many vegetables and really recognizing like this is why seeds are important in your diet too. And like it's just it all comes back to this theme of self-awareness, right? And like actually being able to pay attention of what you're doing versus what you think that you are doing.
yeah, it's also just hard though, right? To eat
It's
that abundance
it
all the
is like I
time.
really had to think about it. I'm saying it's hard,
Right.
and I do this for a living.
Exactly. And so
Yeah,
that's where like our bites have a ton of fiber in them. And we have different types of fiber. So we have prebiotic fiber. We also have probiotics in there, and you need prebiotics and probiotics to go together. Another thing that I have to say, because a lot of people just have probiotics by themselves. And I'm like, it's like, just having soil without water. You kind of need both to go
yeah.
together. And so, we have like citrus fiber. We have different types of things in there. And chicory root's another one. And so you're getting that fiber too when you're having our bite, and not just the vitamins and minerals. And where you can pick up more fiber is always awesome.
Always good for
Yeah.
sure. We love that. Shifting gears a little bit, as I said a few moments ago, I definitely want to ask more about like the business side of things and the motherhood aspect. So let's start with being a mom. What would you say in the last several months since giving birth? Like, what has been the biggest surprise between either balancing this with Gem or really focusing on your child? Like, what is maybe something that you didn't expect until it actually all happened?
I think, well, I actually went into it without a lot of expectations. I wasn't sure if I could juggle it all or balance it. And it is a lot being a founder and a CEO and a mother and breastfeeding. And I think if I'm being honest, the breastfeeding part was something I tried not to put expectations on, but I completely underestimated how much work it is. And I'm
A
sure
lot of women say that.
have seen these, number of hours that you feed your child. It's something like, I don't know, I won't even, I'll misquote it, but maybe we can find it, put it in the show notes. But
I
it's
can do
kind of an
that. Yeah.
absurd amount of, it's like having like three full-time jobs together, basically, with
Yeah.
feeding. And so I think I totally underestimated that, but but it's been really, really fun the last couple of months. She's 9 months now. So really since 6 months, we started feeding her solid foods. And that's a journey, of course, that I like completely dove into head first and have been researching everything at each month stage. Like, how can I introduce certain allergens? What are these textures? How can I make things that, she likes that combines as many plants as possible? And so like I knew that I would love that, but I, of course, like that's been kind of a surprise, fun thing for me to dive into and use a lot of my, gem research, me building a company, me being in this world and being able to apply it to motherhood and nourishment in that way. And so that's been really fun.
So, more of a fun question. What are some of the foods that she really likes? Like, how has that experience been of like seeing her reaction to different things that you're giving her to try?
It's so fun. I love watching her reactions. And of course, the very first food that I ever fed her was spirulina because that's like my favorite. It's nature's original multivitamin. It's the most sustainable plant, but it's not even a plant, it's an algae, which is its own thing, like a mushroom is its own thing. And I gave it to her mixed with banana, and she absolutely loves it. And fun fact, if you do fresh spirulina, it has no taste at all. So
Oh,
dried
I didn't know that.
spirulina usually has that little bit of a taste, aftertaste, fishy aftertaste
Yeah.
people don't like. But fresh spirulina is completely tasteless and it's a fun texture. So there are actually, I'm not sure if like Whole Foods or those places have it in the frozen aisle, but a lot of people's farmers markets, if you're near one, typically actually have fresh spirulina that you can buy. And that's been a really fun food to give her because it can be mixed into a lot of things. It's a natural source of iron, and kids really, babies especially, really need iron. It's really hard to get, and especially because like they're not eating, a whole steak or something.
Right.
So it's a plant-based source of iron that is really bioavailable and easy to mix into a lot of different things like yogurt.
Anything she doesn't like that you were like, let's test this out and see?
Oh, well, she's allergic to eggs.
Oh no,
I
that's
know.
upsetting.
I had many egg dishes to make for her.
Yeah.
Grand
I
plan.
love eggs. I would be devastated if I was allergic to eggs. That's a
It's
tough thing to be
devastating,
allergic
but I
to.
read that it's quite normal and perhaps she'll grow out of
Grow
it.
out of it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, when it comes to everything you were mentioning earlier, just around like not putting expectations on yourself, I'm curious if now in this new role of being a mom, how that's maybe changed like the way you think about operating your business or the way you think about Gem, like even just what you were saying earlier about taking a pause, like you had said when I was like, when you say you don't have time, it's when you actually really need it. I would imagine that's like very relevant for you right now.
It is very relevant. And in fact, I probably have meditated more in the last 6 months than I have like prior in my life. So I've always had grand ambitions to be a meditator. So because you truly want to just pause. Like I'm like, I need to turn off my brain for at least 15 minutes. So it's almost been easier. But this is why I love hiring moms, because they're so efficient, and motherhood has made me so efficient. Like I thought I was efficient before I had a kid, and oh my gosh, you just don't have a choice.
You got
You
to get it
have,
done.
you have to get it done. And so I am incredibly productive. I go through my day and I'm like, I have X, Y, and Z to do, and I'm just going to get it done because I don't have a choice. And this is my only time block to do it. So it's been fun to feel that type of productivity, and why everyone should hire mothers.
I
Yeah.
love that. I think that's great. And, that saying of like, you want to get something done, you give it to a busy person. I don't even love using the word busy because I feel like that also puts like the wrong energy out there. It's like, I'm being productive. Like, I'm literally getting things done. And I can totally appreciate that. And I did, on a more personal note, what you were saying earlier about like the food experience of introducing your daughter to different things, but I also think like the timing that you're in with her age. I have a niece who's just like 2 months older than her, and she's about to celebrate her first birthday in a few weeks. And like that transition of like 6 to 7 months, how much more awareness they get. But then again, from like 9 into like the 12-month range, it's so cool. And it's just like really fascinating to see them form into a person and like have that appreciation for that even though I don't spend a ton of time with her, like it really also encourages you to be super present right? Because you're like, oh my gosh, this is a human being that's forming right in front of me. And being able to see that so fast, like in that first year, is just really incredible.
It is really interesting, actually, this idea of like being present, because I feel like before in my life, it was like, okay, be present. It was like such an active word
Thing.
thing for me to like really
Yeah.
think about and try. But when you're with your baby, you're just so naturally present. And that is really beautiful to like feel that all the time, that kind of like natural, just like being so there and present and like not caring about anything else around you, just like putting blinders on. Um, I guess it's its own form of meditation in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I think that's so
Never
well
thought
said.
about that.
Yeah. And I hadn't thought about the way you said it. Like, it is something where when I think about like when I first started recognizing that I needed to take more pauses and be more committed to meditating, it did really feel like something I had to like really try to do. And now, in going through various phases and stages of my own businesses, it's so easy to lose that because you're like, oh, I need to get back to this thing because I know it was good for me. And then I stopped doing it. And then you start to like justify like why you don't have time. And like you said, like that's when you actually need to make the time to do it. But you're so right. It's like it doesn't have to be this forced thing. Like now it's just happening for you. I think that's really amazing and that's really special.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
When you think about like the future of Gem and where you want things to go with it, is this the sort of company that you envision having more products in the product suite and supporting different aspects of people's wellness? Or is it like the bite is the signature and that's what you're really standing for?
God, such a good question. Of course, I have grand visions of other, I would say other categories more than form factors that I'd love to go into.
Okay.
I am a very focused person in that way. I like to go deep. Like we still have so many more people to reach with our daily bite, with our energy bite, with our sleep bite. And so like how can I focus on reaching more people right now with the products that we do have? And as like we talked a lot about, like I've done a lot of iterations on these products to perfect them. And so I want to make sure they have like the best shot at really getting into more hands. So I definitely have more of like a scale mindset with our existing product line and like a focus on them before diverging into other categories or form factors. And the bite itself is still very much a new category in itself. Like no one else
Yeah.
doing edible forms of vitamins in this way. And so focusing on that form factor is really important, obviously, to our mission and what we want to pursue in the world around food as medicine.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about staying focused though too, right? Because if we really think about everything we were mentioning earlier with comparing to like synthetic vitamins and I think one of the hard parts that I've been referencing is like people just feel like overwhelmed by all this information. And it's like, well, what should I be focusing on first? And what should I do next? And like, once I've done this, where do I go from here? That doesn't just show up in like your health and wellness journey. It can show up in so many different aspects of your life.
For sure. Yeah, beautifully said.
Yeah. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about the sleep bite because I think I alluded to this in saying that sometimes I don't always practice what I preach. So tell me a little bit about the sleep bite, the thought process behind it, some of the different ingredients that are included in it.
So our sleep bite is so fun. It is in a chocolate cherry profile, taste profile.
Oh, nice.
Beautiful. And it's melatonin free. So most sleep products out there are melatonin based, and you actually naturally produce melatonin in your body. And the more melatonin that you take, the more that your body actually needs because it suppresses its own natural production.
So
So
many people
melatonin,
don't
I
understand that.
know.
I would love for you to like, if you wouldn't mind just basically repeating that, like really underscore that because so many people come to me thinking that they're having trouble with their sleep and their knee jerk reaction is like, I should be taking melatonin.
Exactly. So your body naturally produces melatonin, and the more that you supplement melatonin, the more it suppresses your natural production. And then your body becomes reliant on the artificial melatonin that you're supplementing with, which means that it's habit forming. So melatonin, taking melatonin is habit forming. The more you take, the more your body needs it, the more you actually have to take it to go to sleep. So it's sort of this cycle. So I love it's actually there are times in a time and a place, by the way, for melatonin. So for instance, jet lag, or like when you're traveling, I should say, and you have jet lag, that's when melatonin is awesome because you actually probably aren't producing melatonin because you're
Yeah.
off cycle and you need to supplement with it. So there are like cases for it for sure. And our product is melatonin free. We use a natural herb called valerian root, which is an incredible herb. And a lot of people are probably familiar with it in teas mostly, but it helps you kind of get that drowsy feeling and fall asleep. It's obviously not as potent as melatonin, but it works super, super well. And it works really well when combined with some other nutrients as well. So we have magnesium in there, and a lot of people know about magnesium, but that obviously helps kind of wind down your nervous system and your body. And then we also have L-theanine. And so L-theanine, a lot of people are familiar with it maybe in matcha. It's a great kind of focusing amino acid. And it's also, so it's not, there's actually no caffeine in it, L-theanine, but it helps obviously prevent jitters in matcha or coffee. And our product, it actually helps calm the mind in the sleep product, which is really, really cool. So you, again, looking at you sleep holistically, right? How do you calm your nervous system, your mind, your body, and kind of get you that drowsy feeling to fall asleep, stay asleep, and then wake up feeling refreshed. And what's wonderful about this product, because it's melatonin free, obviously it's not habit forming, but a lot of melatonin products actually make you, at least it happens to me. I would always wake up the next morning feeling pretty groggy.
Groggy. Yeah.
And with our product, you don't have that. So, and plus it's in this delicious chocolate cherry.
I know. I
Honey.
was going to
So
say,
it's kind of like a replacement for your dessert.
I'm very intrigued by this one. Like, it's definitely going on my list because I do have a supplement that I take for sleep and has a similar profile of ingredients, but it doesn't taste the best. So I won't say who it is because I don't want to throw them under the bus. You have to chew it. And it's just like, I do it because I get a significantly better night's sleep, but it does have a tiny bit of melatonin. So it's also recommended to cycle off of it like every 2 weeks for that reason. And I totally get the science as to why, but it has L-theanine in it as well. And I really swear by that. Like, that's something that I've changed in my own routine in the last few years. And it's definitely like, if I don't take that along with magnesium, I can see the difference that it makes in my life. But like, you're already convincing me because I'm listing off like 3 different supplements I'm taking just to get what you guys have in your one bite. So there we go.
Well, I'm excited to get you some sleep.
Yeah.
Let me know how it goes.
Thank you. I absolutely will. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, given that we were on the subject of being very efficient of our time with motherhood and everything. So before you go, I just want to ask you a couple more questions and more, I think, around like what we were getting at with like understanding the differences in the space and the fact that there aren't really a lot of other supplements like Gem, and thinking about, as you said, like with the future of Gem, obviously your focus right now is like really getting the product to more people. Obviously, from coming on podcasts and connecting through social media, you're able to get the chance to do that. But if I were to ask you like, who is Gem for? I think the beauty about it is like, it's technically for anybody, right? Because everyone can benefit from this. But I'm curious, like, when you think about the type of person who would benefit the most from Gem, who is that person? Where are they? What are they like? What are they doing all day?
Well, I guess the easy answer is myself, right? Because I built this for myself.
Yeah.
So, but yes, definitely for everyone. But like, I'm a busy person. I do like to eat healthy. I believe in food. Obviously, I try to eat a well-rounded diet, but I am not perfect. I don't believe anyone is perfect.
Nope.
I am running around now that I'm a mother, and it's like a really convenient, delicious grab and go item for me, where I feel good and I can make sure that my gaps are filled and keep feeling my best. And I think it is kind of just for the everyday, busy person.
Love it. Well, we got plenty of those in the FYX audience because I am that person too. So I think there will be a few listeners out there who immediately run to the show notes and check out the website and get their hands on some. Really quick rapid fire questions just to finish up, like fun, light stuff. Since we're on the subject of food, I'm going to give you maybe a hard one for the first one. If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be? Like cuisine or like a specific food?
Spirulina.
I had a feeling you were going to say that. I was like, I think she might go with something. I wasn't sure if you were going to say like, like any food, like if you were going to say like pizza or something like that.
Well, I mean, my life would be pretty boring eating spirulina. I would love a little zhuzh in my life, but if I had to really choose something to survive on, I could survive on it.
People usually have a hard time answering that question. You were good. You were quick. what is your go-to workout routine? I know you mentioned earlier that you obviously like walking, but what's kind of in your arsenal?
Well, I used to surf and
Oh,
horseback
cool.
ride and run. And I feel like all three of those things I haven't been able to do in the last 9 months of my
I
life.
think that's pretty fair as to why.
So now I still do a lot of Pilates and yoga. Those are my go-to right now, currently.
Awesome. Last book you read? Are you a reader? Might not have as much time for that these days as a mom.
Also, not as much time, but there is this
Yeah.
book that I'm really excited to read, and I'm in chapter one right now, and I
Okay,
haven't,
that counts.
and it's called Butter, and it's kind of this like Japanese cult classic, I guess, or cult book. I don't know if it's a classic, and it's about this like food critic slash serial killer. I'll just leave it
Interesting.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm
I'm
really
gonna
excited
go.
to read it. We'll see when I ever read it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go look that up. That sounds really interesting. Quite the combo. I have to say, I find that even in like the last 2 years or so for me personally, I used to be somebody who was like really into reading lots of different self-development books. And I still love that. And I also binge podcasts like crazy. As a podcaster, it's funny. Some podcasters are like, I never listened to podcasts. I'm like, but you have one. Like, how do you not listen to them? I love listening to them and I kind of get my self development from that. But on the book side of things, I've transitioned more into like fiction because I really needed to just like shut my brain off and like helping with that like wind down routine. It's like, let's not try to better ourselves at 10 p.m. Like, let's just put the brain on the
I
shelf.
hear you. Like, I think
Yeah.
that's a lot where I like start to I actually been craving fiction so much more in my life because I just need that break and space. Shantram was actually one that I did an audio book of. That was now like 9 months ago when I gave birth. That was like when I was walking a lot before I gave birth. That was my go-to book. And it's a very long book. So it was good for that purpose.
Well, I'm going to have to put it on my list. So thank you.
Also,
Okay, last but not least, you're going to have a quick answer for this one because it's got to be Gem. But what's your shameless plug? Like, if there's one thing that somebody could take away from this, whether it's what Gem stands for, them incorporating into their life, what's it going to be?
well, Gem. Yeah, you got to have dailygem.com in your life. Any of our Gem products. And I think the shameless plug is probably like building on what we talked a lot about today, which is just food is medicine and taking care of yourself and giving that moment of pause or bite.
Love it. Well, Sarah, thank you so much. I will link down in the show notes where everybody can find you. But is there, best social media accounts to reach you to go right to the Gem page? What do you recommend if anybody has more questions or wants to learn more? Because it also sounds like you have such a fabulous team in place too.
Oh, I have an incredible team. At daily_gem, and then my last name and first name at Cullen_Sara is where you guys can find us and message anytime.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again. And to everybody who is listening today, I hope you enjoyed this episode. We're excited for your feedback on it. As always, it seriously helps the show if you leave a review, if you share it with somebody, help spread the word on Gem, as you heard, with that being Sarah's mission. And so that people can really lead their best and truly healthiest lives in all aspects, not just when it comes to just the food piece or just the stress management piece or just the sleep piece. It's really bringing this all together. And obviously, that aligns with the fitness fix too. So this has been a really cool conversation for me to have and some takeaways for me in my own life, but to also pass to our clients. And I'm excited to hear everybody's feedback on this one. But from wherever you're listening from, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and we will catch you next week. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.